Rudeus Greyrat was a pathetic man in his former life, but got the opportunity when Truck-kun visited him and he was sent to another world. There, he trained from an early age and became an overpowered mage. Despite the fact that he retained the cultured degenerate side to him. Now, he plans to spend the rest of his life with a reasonable goal instead of living like an idiot, the way he did in his past life. On a rainy night, Truck-kun decided to do his thing and send a pathetic loser in his mid-30s to the world beyond. Paramedics rushed to the scene and took him to the hospital, but it was already time for his crappy, useless life to end. As his consciousness faded, he regretted the fact that he wasn't able to clap anyone in his miserable life. He could only get clapped by Truck-kun. When his eyes opened, he had been reincarnated as a little boy known as Rudeus. A blonde-haired man picked him up and decided to plant a kiss on him, which further proved that this was a very sus situation. It's also very pitiful that the first kiss he got came from a man. He also couldn't understand what the man and his wife were saying. Rudeus looked at his mother's milk tanks and realized that they would be enough to feed a nation. His parents' names were Paul and Zenith, and they always got down and dirty, despite the fact that there was a baby in the room. After 6 months, he had started to get the hang of things, but his degenerate side was still there. Their maid, Lilia, began to suspect that the little piece of shit had a few loose screws, but she found it hard to tell Zenith. While looking at his father practicing sword fights, he went Humpty Dumpty mode and fell down from a bench. And his mother used healing magic on him. This was the first time Rudeus had seen magic, and he marveled at the sight of it. When he was finally stable on his feet, he started learning to read the language of the new world, and his progress was speeded up, thanks to his father, Paul. Unknown to him, Lilia and Zenith occasionally spied on him when he went to the attic to read. After reading the magic manual for a while, Rudeus was able to conjure up the most useless water ball spell ever, only rivaling the uselessness of Sakura. It was as if he wasn't destined to be an overpowered MC. He tried to recite the spell again, but he ended up using magic without any incantations. Due to the fact that he still had a small mana pool, he passed out after his second attempt, like Megumin after using explosion magic. As time passed by, he became more consistent with his spells, and his mana reserve grew large. Paul and Zenith, on the other hand, used whatever free time they had to clap each other and make happy noises. As Rudeus studied at night, realizing that his mana bank could get bigger at an early age, Rudeus continued to practice, feeling that he was the next best thing since sliced bread. With time, he was able to shoot his liquids everywhere. Oh, his magic water, of course. One day, he ended up destroying the attic while he chanted a spell. Zenith was overjoyed to see that her stupid son was a bit useful and not entirely Sakura-level useless. Then, she suggested to Paul that they hire a magic tutor to help with Rudeus's lessons. Paul wanted Rudeus to be a swordsman, so Lilia suggested that they split his training through the day to accommodate both classes, rather than an overgrown mage like Gandalf showing up at the door. They were met with a young girl known as Roxy. She, as well, was disappointed to see that she'd be tutoring a little brat, who probably had no talent and no first kisses either. Roxy displayed that she was quite adept at water and healing magic while teaching Rudeus. Seeing that Rudeus had talent, Roxy decided to teach the pathetic boy. After that, his family called Roxy in so they could get acquainted, and Rudeus decided to make use of his second chance at life. Rudeus's funeral was being held, and apparently no one cared about him enough to attend his funeral. Not even Truck-kun. Here he is, in his dumpster of a room, beating his meat to God knows what, oblivious to the fact that 3 men in black-looking dudes are about to jump him. He makes a feeble attempt at putting up a fight, but being as out of shape as he is, he gets thrown out easily, as the useless, scrawny little kid he is, with no first kiss. He walks down the road and prevents Truck-kun from plowing down 3 students who were too focused in a conversation about God knows what to notice the truck sliding down in their direction. Using his overweight, Snorlax-like body, he pushes them out of the road and takes one for the team. At least he died a hero. Although, no one really cared. It's the present day, and he can clearly hear his parents, who are as loud as birds in the morning, making babies in their bedroom. He stops for a second, hoping to get a little sister, smiling to himself, thinking of the embarrassing questions he could ask his parents if he innocently barges in on them. Absolutely nobody is free from his degeneracy. He looks down the corridor and notices Roxy on her knees, too focused on pleasuring herself to notice his presence. What exactly is wrong with this household? Well, at least he gets a free live show. It's been 6 months, and Rudeus's magic has improved significantly. He can now perform intermediate spells with ease. Surprisingly though, considering all he does is look down Roxy's skirt while she reads to him. Roxy tells Rudeus of her demon background, which can be indicated by her purple hair color, and also takes a bit of time to explain to him about the war between the humans and the demons, also known as the Supered race, called the Laplace War. She explained why the humans hated the demon race and warned him to stay away from green-haired people with red gems on their foreheads. Apparently, they were dangerous. Rudeus keeps getting better at magic, but sucks at swordplay. Paul wasn't helping the situation either, as he sucked at teaching. They were both big suckers that couldn't help each other. They sucked at that too. While hiding from a distance, Rudeus watches kids his age play around, not participating due to his social anxiety from being picked on in his past life for being a sad, lonely loser. Roxy walks up to him and tells him about the Renoa Magic University, supposedly the best in the world. That could help him become a better mage, and probably give him better riz, too. It's been a year and a half since Roxy came around. On the day of his 5th birthday, there was a small celebration, with Paul deep-throating a song as a party trick. They hand him gifts. Paul gifts him a sword. Giving your 5-year-old a sharp object is a little bit shady, but okay, not very sharp of him. Zenith gifts him a book, and Roxy gives him a magic wand. Finally, something good. Telling him that he graduates from her tutoring the next day. Rudeus is happy. His past life had been a mess, and he had been bullied into a shell and spent the rest of his days lazy in his room. This was an extremely good turnaround for him and his sad, lonely life. It's his graduation, but he doesn't want to go outside with Roxy because of his extreme social anxiety. They head out, nevertheless, and he's able to get rid of that phobia after realizing that the villagers are pretty chill. Either that, or he was pretty uninteresting. They get to their destination, and Roxy performs a high-level water spell, prompting him to waterbending mode as his final exam. He casts the spell at an even larger scale than that of Roxy's, surpassing her and earning her commendation. But still, no first kiss, sadly. Roxy and the Greyrats share an emotional moment as she leaves their home to accomplish her goals of becoming a better mage while traveling around the world. Rudeus is grateful to Roxy for unknowingly freeing him from his phobia and steals one of her undies as a keepsake, which Lilia finds in his room. Rudeus was bringing out his hidden keepsake, Roxy's undies, and Paul attempting to grab on Zenith's behind while she tended to her plants. Like father, like son. Paul and Zenith play around a bit before Rudeus interrupts, requesting to go outside to play. They happily oblige, considering he had never behaved like a kid and were afraid that he would turn out to be a wakeling. Rudeus heads out to touch grass and reconnect with nature. He stumbles upon 3 kids jumping a kid, a demon, having been bullied before, so he intervenes, using magic spells to chase away the bullies. He picks up the kid and cleans him up, noticing that the kid has green hair. He stops to check for a forehead gem, remembering Roxy's warning. Apparently, he was able to learn and look up her skirt at the same time. Impressive. Finding none, they talk for a while. The boy's name is Sylph, and he is half demon. They quickly get along, and Sylph asks Rudeus to teach him some magic tricks, to which he agrees. Rudeus gets home to find Paul waiting for him at their doorstep. Apparently, one of the bully's mothers had come to report him to his parents. He tries to explain, but gets smacked on the face because Paul thinks he's trying to make excuses. Rudeus, being a smart kid, uses his father's impatience to get the upper hand, sarcastically explaining how he defended a kid from the bullies. Paul apologizes, and they head inside. Paul gets shit-faced drunk while admitting the fact that he's been outsmarted repeatedly by a 5-year-old. Over time, Sylph had gotten the hang of magic and was able to cast incantationless spells, which Rudeus hoped were exclusive to him. After all, he was reincarnated, so he should be special. But what a pity it wasn't. They goofed off for a bit and got drenched by sudden rain. Heading to the safety of the Greyrat home, they both met Lilia, who had prepared a bath to warm them up from the cold rain. In the bathroom, Rudeus quickly takes off his clothes and notices that Sylph is hesitant to do the same, not being able to read the room. He drags off Sylph's clothes and makes a shocking discovery. Sylph is a girl, not a boy. Sylph's feelings were hurt, and so were Rudeus's. He didn't mean to embarrass her. Paul and Zenith comforted both of them. Rudeus attempted to apologize, but made her cry more instead. The next day, during training, Rudeus asks his father, who should have more experience with women, for advice on how to handle the situation. His father gives him some. He attempts to follow through with it, but fumbles badly. However, Sylph forgives him, and they move on peacefully. Zenith is knocked up. Definitely not a surprise, considering how often they go at it. But, wait for it, Lilia is pregnant too, and the father is none other than Paul. Disappointed, Zenith walks up to him and smacks him on the head. Zenith and Lilia sit to decide Lilia's fate. Lilia has decided to leave after childbirth to raise her child in her hometown. Zenith disagrees, stating that the journey would be too much for a new mother. Paul tries to speak up, but is shot down faster than an aircraft in a no-fly zone. Zenith is distressed and doesn't know what to do. Rudeus, being the opportunist that he is, considers his options. On one hand, he doesn't want Lilia or her kid to end up losing their lives. On the other hand, which he probably has been doing business with, she has been good to him, raising him, cleaning up after him, and most importantly, keeping his lingerie stealing activities a secret from his family. Walking up to his mother, Rudeus shifts the blame to Paul, claiming that Lilia couldn't refuse Paul's advances. It was just way too much riz for her to handle. Zenith is extremely upset and stares angrily at Paul, who once again fails to defend himself, putting Paul at an unfortunate disadvantage. Rudeus calms his mother down, de-escalating things as she accepts the situation and allows Lilia to stay as a part of their family. It's a training session, and Paul takes out his frustration on the not-so-innocent Rudeus, who begs for his life like the weakling he is, while blocking a relentless series of sword strokes from his father. After all, it wasn't his fault that his father couldn't pull out and get the 2-for-1 special, and he did calm his mother down. Lilia, on the other hand, is grateful to Rudeus for saving her. She had been the one to seduce Paul. She spent many nights awake with pent-up sexual frustration, listening to Zenith's and Paul's moans while they went at it. She was extremely hot, with a gigantic pair of knockers. So getting Paul to sleep with her wasn't even a challenge. She is grateful to Rudeus. She has always been scared of him, with the assumption that he was possessed, considering how desperately he always looked at her, but not anymore, as she had become indebted to him. He had saved her life, and her cheeks, most importantly. Some time had passed. The babies have been born. Rudeus watches Paul make a fool of himself in an attempt to entertain the babies, but ends up making them cry instead, which makes Zenith and Lilia pick them up before sending him on a petty errand. Shameful. There and then, Rudeus decides that he wants to be the cool big brother so that his siblings can at least have a strong male figure in their lives. Rudeus and Lilia have also gotten closer. She tells him some stories from her past, one of which involves her experiences with a younger, good-for-nothing Paul when he popped her cherry. Rudeus trains with his father, getting his butt beat when he tries to outsmart his father using a surprise magic attack, which Paul effortlessly blocks. Of course, you can't pull two baddies without having this level of aura. They take a moment roasting each other and exchanging sultry jokes. Paul also brings up the fact that Rudeus is of age and can go to school even though he doesn't need it. Rudeus thinks about it for a moment before brushing it off. Sylph practices a spell as Rudeus watches. He admits his desire to leave town in order to improve his magical and sword skills. She bursts into tears, saying she doesn't want him to leave her alone, to which Rudeus agrees. He didn't want to leave her either. Rudeus lays in his bed, fantasizing about Sylph in the most cultured way ever, but is interrupted by Paul. He had gotten a letter from Roxy, who was now a tutor to one of the princes in the Siron kingdom. She writes about the prince explaining how he and Rudeus are similar in terms of stealing undergarments and learning things fast. She also advises him to consider the magic university she told him about previously, as she had also become a higher level magic user. It's mealtime, and Rudeus wants to make a request. Paul declines, but is met with kicks to his shin from both Lilia and Zenith. He tries to explain, but as usual, is shunned with another set of kicks to the shin. Rudeus asks for permission to go to school, along with Sylph, with the request that Paul pay their tuition, because her family isn't too well off. Paul declines, stating 3 reasons. It's too expensive, he's too young, and he hasn't learned enough sword skills. Rudeus understands, and instead requests a job so as to earn the money to pay Sylph's tuition when the time is right, to which his father agrees. Rudeus and Paul train. A carriage stops in front of them. A rugged, half-beast, half-human woman named Gislan, with a nice set of huge, almost bare knockers, steps out. Lilia and Zenith greet her, and they engage in a light conversation, leaving Rudeus confused because they are talking about him leaving. Suddenly, Paul attacks him. He tries to put up a fight, but is no match for Paul, who knocks him out like some noob in Tekken. He wakes up in the back of the moving carriage, and Gislan informs him that they both will work together from that moment forward.